Hey everybody, Nick here, and today we're going to do something a little bit different, a little bit meta, a little bit unique, and perhaps interesting to some people. We're going to talk a little bit about how it is that I'm actually making my reviews on two fronts. We're going to talk technical, and we're going to talk, well, more intellectual, moral, preparatory, that sort of an affair. Moral? Yeah, moral's not really coming into it. But anyways, for the very first time, we're going to lift off and finally see what the Nick studio looks like. So here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go. Bam! That right there is the Nick Shabazz filming studio, seen for the very first time on camera here this evening. I can kind of give you a little guided tour. Up here is my lighting system. So I've got two LED lighting panels. I'll throw a link in the description there. And I've got them dialed into the right brightness, and I've got them hidden behind a big sheet of light-absorbing plastic. Well, not absorbing, light dispersing. I picked it up on the Amazon for photographers, and it works like a charm. I've got them mounted on two big screw rods that I've quite literally drilled into the table and stick through the other side. Not a great solution, but by God, it works. Then right here is where my phone sits. I've got my fiance's phone sitting in as a stand-in for it, but nonetheless, got this tripod here, which is by Veo. Looks to be a 235 AP. But it's a nice little tripod in that it gives me some flexibility. I can move it up and down, and it gives me this arm here, which in addition to being a normal, stick-up arm, you can fold over like this. And then I've got my phone inside a little clampy sort of arrangement. I'll see if I can pull her phone out of there. Come on now. Yeah, the arrangement looks just like this. I'll throw a link up there for the Amazon. And so that's where my phone is sitting during reviews, because all of my filming is done on my phone. I plug it in here just for power, and then talk into the microphone right there. It works well enough. I'm really happy about that. And so that's the technical side of how I'm filming it. I just film, and I film, and I film with this straight down sort of perspective. Some other things to highlight over here. This is my little chest of drawers. Over here I've got a whole drawer full of knives and gear that I have yet to review, but desperately need to, including a G10 Dragonfly, a Gale Bradley buoy. Oh, what else? The Monster Hunter still needs a review, some San Renmu, of course this high-quality piece right here, and more. So I got plenty more to review. Those are stuff that I own but never get around to reviewing. One other aspect of the lighting setup is this little guy down here. This is just a, Home Depot cheapo lighting fixture with a photography bulb in it, but it bounces light up off of the ceiling behind me. This prevents the blade from looking too dark. I'll turn it off for a second, and you'll see that when we go overhead now, suddenly this blade kind of goes to a bit of a blackness, as opposed to when I pop it back on, there's a great deal more visible light. Neat little trick I figured out. Behind this, actually no, underneath here is my disassembly tools. And I actually take that little bit of rolled up mat and I put it down for disassembly. That way I'm not getting grease all over my nice setup down here. And then I just reach in here as I'm doing my disassemblies and grab out the tools I needed. My Torx bits and whatnot. That's a beautiful thing. Then this little area right here has a bunch of knives that I very often refer to during review. So, Z Hunter 452 from ZT, Dragonfly Delica, Rat 2, Rat 1, Rat 2, see I can't get them right even here. A PM2, and then I've got a large Shabazz in there at the moment, but that's a loaner at the moment. Then right there, flashlight I use to shed some light on the subject, rubbing alcohol. And over here is my list of things I have to review next. So at the moment, I need to review this GM2, a pair of CKFs from my buddy Nico, and a bunch of other gear from my buddy Jim up there. I've knocked it down a fair amount, but I got more stuff incoming every day. So there you go. And then over here, I've got my iPad. And so as I'm actually doing my review, as I'm actually sitting right like this, what I'm doing is spending a lot of time actually looking over at the iPad, because the iPad has my actual notes, and we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, that's just the technical side of how I'm filming all of this. It's pretty straightforward and in some ways pretty boring, but it seems to do the trick, and I'm pretty happy with it. Now let's talk about what actually goes into a review. Once a knife is on my table, then it goes into the line, and that's often where a lot of gear spends a lot of time. I really try to minimize the amount of time I've got loaned gear, for instance, but sometimes a bunch of people send all at once, and I end up with a table that's just completely full up. In that case, I just try to do first in, first out. But nonetheless, once a knife kind of comes up for review, it's next on the list, so to speak. The next step for me is always to do the disassembly. I do this for a couple of reasons, partly because I enjoy it, partly because it makes for, I think, an interesting video here and there, but partly because it tells me something very real about the quality of the knife itself. Very often, inexpensive knives can feel fine coming out of the factory, but you then take them apart and you realize, oh my god, a lot of work was done to try and make this knife feel okay. A lot of fiddling needs to be done. You gotta have to make sure the centering's right. It's a total pain in the neck, as opposed to other knives, the Shabazz being kind of the prime example of this, where you could put this guy, together blindfolded and drunk and it's gonna be fine. It doesn't need any fuss in reassembly. So seeing that difference is important to me. It also lets me see design flaws, like, oh my god, these washers are so thin, I'm going to crack them by breathing on them. Or, in some cases, it'll let me see design perks, like, wow, that's a really neat detent system, or holy crap, look at the amount of skeletonization in here. It's important to me in the way that I look at knives. Some people may disagree. The other thing that it does is it puts everything on an even keel. If I get a loan a knife from somebody that's been carried and loved for many years, the action may not be so great. This guy was fine, by the way, but still. And the thing is, though, I don't want to evaluate a knife on the basis of a very gritty, heavily used sort of action. So I make sure and I sit the knife down and I do that full clean out. And I do that with every knife that comes across my table by and large. Sometimes there are exceptions, but this lets me evaluate everything on the same metric. This is a Nick Shabazz clean knife, and with that level of maintenance and attention, it is very, very smooth, or it is still not very smooth, or, that kind of thing. And it lets me talk directly about that rather than saying this particular knife is a little dirty, so I think the action, because that's unsatisfying to me. So that's why the disassembly happens before any of the carrying, because that's the next stage. Once I've done the disassembly, it's carry time, and so every knife spends some time in my pocket. In some cases, it could be as little as a day. If I feel like, I understand what I need to about this knife, I'm good to go. Sometimes a day is really all it takes for me to understand the troubles here. Sometimes, though, knives spend a lot of time in my pocket. Sometimes it's a knife that I'm not really sure that I like, but I'm on the edge. Sometimes it's a knife that I really hate, and I want to make sure that it's, that I'm not missing something, or that I feel like I don't understand. Some are very straightforward, some take forever, and I don't even know what predicts that. There are, of course, exceptions. Some knives, like the CKF muscle here, this is a huge knife. It's big and it's scary, and frankly, it's really, really weird to carry this guy in my kind of a life. And so this'll probably be a weekend carry, mostly around the house, just to get a sense of how it does carry. And of course, with every knife, I'll do some basic cutting tests. Things like some cardboard, things like some... I'll do some basic food prep if I think it merits it, some paper cutting, just to get a sense of things. But, so it'll get that, but, this isn't going to get hugely carried. That's just the simple fact of my life. But anyway, so the carry is kind of the next portion, and that just happens over and over until I feel like, okay, I think I get this. Then I move on to writing the review. So for me, the next step is to sit down and write the review. This is a pretty casual process. Usually I'm sitting down on the couch with the fiancé watching something on TV that I don't really give much of a damn about, and just sitting there and, flipping the knife, looking it over, thinking to myself, okay, what did I like? What did I hate? What drove me crazy? What brought me joy about carrying this knife and about the object itself? And that's where the review comes from. I just write these in Markdown, which is a very simple text sort of language. And, I structure it in the same way as my review. So, here's the introduction. Here's the good, the great, the bad, the ugly, and then my final conclusions down there. And so by doing this, I can really plot the review out ahead of time. And usually as I'm sitting there handling the knife, I'll kind of jump back and forth. I'll, say, okay, I'm looking at this. Okay, I really like that swedge, so under the blade, I'm going to put nice swedge. But man, I hate that parallel, that flat grind line, so I'll scroll on down to the bad. Yeah, that was bad. And I'll write that in there. And it's a very kind of hodgepodge. But what this does, what writing this out in this level of detail does, is it allows me not only to, well, talk maybe a little bit more fluidly as I'm doing this, but it allows me to structure things a little bit so I have a little bit more clear understanding. And it allows me to rank things. It's a little known fact, and maybe no one else has noticed this, but as I'm doing my bad sections and my good sections, I generally go from the least good to the most good, the least bad to the most bad. And in fact, what is now the great used to just be the last item of the good. So there you go, a little behind the scenes. But I'm able to structure this in a way that as I'm doing the review, I can kind of just point by point go through it, and I'm effectively reading off this list, although naturally I talk a little bit more. I do tend to talk. And then once I've finished looking at the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly, and I really feel like I get the knife. And sometimes I'll write up the review and then I'll just sit on it for a little while because I'm not quite there yet. Like I haven't fully understood what's going on with the knife, and so I'll put it on hold for a little while. And then finally, when I get it, and usually I do more carrying at that point, I'll write up the final conclusion here. And, usually that's in some detail, and usually this is more fully written out, particularly if I'm saying something controversial. If you're going to say something controversial, you better say it well. But anyways, nonetheless, I'll write up my conclusion, and then I'm ready to film. The filming process, I've talked about the technical side already, but practically speaking, what I'm doing is I'm sitting here with the knife here and the iPad right there. So I can very easily look over and see, okay, I'm talking about the introduction, so I need to say this and then this and this. And so I look at the bullet points and then I just talk because I know, okay, I need to talk about this being the sequel to the Rubicon. That's all I've got written down there, but I can then kind of fluff it up a little bit. So this knife is the sequel to the Spyderco Rubicon, which was a great knife, etc. And so I do that. And I talk and I talk and I talk, and I try and get through all of the bullet points in a given section because I film all my reviews in those 6 sections. At the end of my review, at the end of filming, I should have 6 good clips: the introduction, the good, the great, the bad, the ugly, and the conclusion. And that's it. A lot of people ask, Nick, what software do you do for your editing and whatnot? I hate video editing, so I don't do any of it. All I use is QuickTime to stitch those 6 clips together. I just drag in the 1, the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, bam, done. Export, call it a freaking day. This is why you don't see fancy pictures popping up, why you don't see, crazy intro videos with, rock metal guitar. Yeah, none of that stuff. I don't want to do any of that. That's just an aside. And so I don't edit at all. The way I do that, though, is by doing a lot of takes. So let's say that I'm working on the good for a given piece of gear, and I'm 5 out of the 10 good pieces, and I just screw up. Whether it's because I accidentally dropped the knife, whether it's because that happens, whether it's because I say something stupid, I get really, really tongue-tied, I throw in a phrase that I really don't want to on camera, those little sorts of things. Or just, random bodily functions on occasion will happen and screw up a take. If it tells you anything right now for this section about filming how to film the review, I'm on take 6 right now. That 6 is this many, by the way. Long day. But anyway, so I film over and over again. And if I screw up something, if I realize, this take's dead, right there, I just stop it, reach up to the camera, shut off the camera, and restart. Start from the very beginning. This eats a lot of time, and especially for knives where I have strong emotions, or I'm saying something that I'm afraid might be a little bit controversial, or frankly that I just want to say very precisely. These reviews can have, upwards of, my record at the moment is, I think, 68 takes, and that was on your Medford Praetorian. I kept calling it a knife. How stupid is that, right? But anyways, I'll just refilm and refilm and refilm until I get a perfect take, until the good is done. At that point, this is a pro tip. What I do is I stop the camera, reach up, stop the camera, then I put my hand down like this, and then I restart the camera for like half a second or something like that. Then I can go on and move on to the next one. When I'm looking at these videos, the preview is going to be like the first second of the image. And so what I'll see is like bad take, bad take, bad take, bad take, bad take, and then a picture of my hand. And I know that the one that's right before the picture of my hand, that was the good one. And so I just grab that one, and that's how I know which one to stitch together. It's a stupid little thing, but it saved me huge amounts of time. I will also occasionally split an extra long section into multiple takes. If I have a huge rant planned for the ugly, maybe I'll film one for each, one segment for each of the ugly points. I'm pretty flexible with it, but by and large, I try to film in complete clips. I never go in there and do, oh, I need to remove that one word, or I need to, take out that one point. By and large, if I need to do that, I screwed it up anyways. So I better not. So that's the filming process. And eventually I come around to the conclusion and I'm done. At that point, all the magic happens over on the computer, and that's really boring. I've got this little cable hooked right into my phone here. I upload it into, I'm on a Mac, so I use the Photos app to pull the videos right before the pictures of my hand off. That gives me 6 files. I stitch them together in QuickTime. I export them from QuickTime and upload them to the YouTube. And there you go. Case closed, problem solved. I shoot all those pictures out on the deck and the little preview pictures there. And then I've got a finished video. Just got to write up the description, put in the tags that don't actually, I don't think, matter to anybody ever at all, and throw it in the playlist. And there you go. You've got yourself another quality Nick Shabazz review. So that's how the magic happens. I hope this has been interesting to you. And, if you're just getting started in reviewing, I'm not saying this is the best approach, but it's certainly an approach. And it seems to be working out okay for me, at least in my opinion. I hope this has been interesting. If you have any other questions about the process, feel free to ask them down there below. Otherwise, well, I hope that you have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.